Hello everyone, welcome back to YK Reviews. For today's video and for the month of October, going to be all Halloween type, horror type movies. So for the first one of the month, it's going to be about Child's Play, the very first one. So let's get into it. So for Child's Play, this was originally created by donmancini, and for me, my personal backstory is I've seen the first two Child Play movies when I was a kid, but once my dad figured out the movie that I was watching, he completely cut me out from the Chucky series, the Child's Play franchise, so I've not been able to see it until quite recently, and in terms of these videos here, reviewing all of them. So I had a really fun time watching Child's Play over and over again. Watching it this time around, I really enjoyed this movie. Every single review that I'll be doing for the Child's Play franchise, the Chucky movies, I'm going to be speaking a lot in terms of the opening sequences. What I really enjoy for this movie in particular, you have the opening sequence, you get introduced straight off the bat to the antagonist, the villain of the movie and the villain of the franchise. You have charlesleeray as a human getting hunted down by the police. He goes into a toy store where it's got all these good guy dolls, all these Chucky dolls in there. And so the police, when he shoots the charlesleeray, and side note with charlesleeray, I love that the name charlesleeray was from 3 serial killers. So it was really a great connection there, and you come to figure out that with charlesleeray, he was the Lakeshore Strangler. So you have great introduction to the character. Then once he gets shot and gets killed, he does this voodoo with a good guy doll to eventually transfer a soul to this doll. And that opening sequence, just how you introduce the character, how you introduced Chucky, it was the perfect opening sequence in my opinion to the franchise and to this movie. So I loved what they do with that. It's the same with the other movies. The opening sequences it's so perfect, and they really nail the opening sequences. So then once the opening sequence is finished, you get introduced to the character of Andy Barkley, and he is the child who gets a good guy doll eventually. But I like how they introduced his character in itself. You have this kid who is basically it's his birthday, he's making breakfast for his mum on his birthday, which I found really cute. And you kind of see the innocence of him, and making cereal, making toast, just making a complete mess in itself. And you can see him and his interaction with his mother. I really liked the interaction with them, especially once she gives him his birthday present to find that it was clothes, and him being understanding as a child that he will get a toy, because you can see the disappointment in his face, and she promises him that she'll get him something, but because of the finances and everything, she couldn't do it right now. So you see how much of a sweet kid he is, and how understanding he is, and that's what I really liked about him as a character. I know obviously as a kid, acting isn't going to be top notch or Oscar worthy, so I don't have any gripes with the acting or anything like that. I think he did a fantastic job there, and I loved, like I said, the interaction between him and his mum. And so as the movie progresses, you get to see it focuses on his mum, it focuses on her little journey of how she got the doll. As you know, she buys a doll from an alleyway, from a guy in an alleyway, and then once she presents it with Andy, having to go back to work, and then having her friend look after Andy during the evening. And I loved that sequence, that whole babysitting sequence. You have Chucky coming to life and teasing the babysitter, messing around with her head. You have that little intensity, and you have the creepy vibes. And then once Chucky does eventually kill her by having her falling off the window and onto a car, basically falling to her death, I like the little imprints that you get to see of how Chucky leaving his not DNA but his little evidence, because you get the flower that was on the floor with his footprints on there. So obviously in these types of circumstances, these types of movies, when the child is trying to blame it on a doll, the adults don't believe him. So I like that aspect, but of course you find it frustrating that like you believe Andy, it's obvious, but obviously the adults don't believe him. But what I really liked is how the mum, because of like Andy and the mum's relationship, how the closeness of it, she does eventually start figuring it out, and I like how it does focus on her and like her journey, as I mentioned. And once she realizes it could be Chucky, the intelligence of like checking the back of the back of Chucky, seeing there's no batteries in there, and the best part of the movie, like one of my favorite scenes, I feel like, is once she threatens to throw him in a fire and just Chucky coming to life and just going ballistic on her. I found hilarious, and I found incredible to watch. Like, it was an amazing sequence, an amazing scene of him revealing himself to her and just attacking her, and it was fantastic. Like, the movie just keeps you on the edge of your seats. It keeps you on your toes. It's never boring. And what I love also in particular is you get to see, because in the beginning of the movie, when Charlesleeray, as a human, like, he threatens to get revenge on everybody. So the people that done him wrong, the cop that killed him. So then once he becomes Chucky, you get to see him using Andy to manipulate him. And I loved how he like was able to go and kill the Eddie character, who was the van driver in the beginning sequence, who like kind of ditched him as he like drove off, getting chased by the police, leaving Charles to basically run into the toy store. So I love how you get that suspense of Chucky being the intelligent killer that he is, turning on the gas in the oven, blowing up Eddie in the house itself. I really liked that sequence, and his way of like handling things, like when they introduced the detective that's basically doesn't believe Andy at first, doesn't believe the mum as well, but then once he like gets that interaction with Chucky in that car sequences, with Chucky like using the knife in the car seat, and like it was a fantastic sequences there. And with the detective itself, I really enjoyed his character. I thought he was intelligent, I thought he was funny, I thought he was likable. He was smart enough to know that maybe there is some credibility to this, maybe we have got something that we can investigate. And once he does, because like I said, it focuses on the mum's journey, it focuses on like once she like sees that Chucky is alive, she has to go like find him, and what she has to do, where she has to go, and the detective basically saving her, because she goes to the person that she bought the doll from in the first place, and he was going to try and take advantage of her, the detective stepping in and like having them to go on the journey, finding Andy, finding Chucky, leading up to the whole sequence of the third act. But before we get to the third act, I also loved the sequences with the voodoo, because you do get that explanation of essentially what the plot is, because basically Chucky needs Andy, as he was the first person who he revealed his true identity to. He needs Chucky so that he can transfer his soul from the doll to Andy to basically survive, because the longer he's in the doll, the more human he becomes. So I like that sequences with the voodoo person, where basically the way he kills the voodoo person, when he's got the doll and the knife and he's like stabbing, basically breaking his legs, breaking body parts, and then eventually stabbing the doll, killing the voodoo man. That's what I really enjoyed about the franchise itself. Some of the kills were so creative. For example, blowing up the Eddie character in the house, using a voodoo doll to kill the voodoo man, basically. Just, I really enjoyed that, and I know there may not have been a lot of kills in the movie itself, but the kills that did happen were fantastic and creative. So you get to that third act, you get to the final sequence where Chucky gets Andy on the floor in Andy's house and tries to perform the voodoo ritual to try and get Charles's soul transferred into Andy. You've got the detective and the mum stepping in, and then all three of them like just battling each other, getting Chucky into the fire and like burning him, and like that visual of Chucky being burnt and like going towards Andy. It was so fantastic, and I loved the effects. Like, it wasn't CGI or anything like that, animatronics, a person in like a suit. It just came across so visually stunning and so creepy as F that I loved the visual of like a burnt Chucky. And like especially in the first two movies, Chucky goes through hell in the third act. You have them burning him, shooting him, eventually like blowing him up. And that whole sequence in itself where like you have Chucky going after Andy, going into these different rooms, the hunt for Chucky to Andy's mum, Andy the detective, even the eventual police officer that does come in and gets like strangled by Chucky through like with the arm. It was just a fantastic third act and a fantastic way to like end the movie in itself. So I loved what they did with this movie. It was just so menacing. It was so brilliant. It was a fantastic start to the franchise. Like Child's Play, the very first one, is a fantastic horror movie, and I loved this movie. It's so rewatchable. You can have such a good time with this, and it's one I highly recommend. If you've not seen the Chucky movies, definitely start off with this one. You will be thoroughly entertained. If you have seen the movie though, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought about it, what your thoughts are, what your favorite scene is, and eventually like what you thought about the franchise in as a whole here. But keep an eye out on the channel. This is just gonna be the very first. I'm reviewing all the Chucky movies and also the Chucky TV series as well before season 2 comes out. So keep an eye out on the channel. It's gonna be so much more for October. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for listening though. Please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future videos here. This is YK Reviews. Peace.